I'm your host, Ariel Willow. Welcome to Ghost Tea Podcast, a podcast for those who seek magic. Hello, ghosties. Welcome back to Ghost Tea Podcast. Today, I want to be talking about the concept of know thyself, know thy power. This is something that I like to center my business around. As you can see on my website, I do mention that a lot. And one of the reasons why is because I do think that it's really important that the more we know ourselves, the better we understand our own capabilities, our own limitations, and our own ability to navigate difficulty and navigate our beneficial situations as well. So I do want to talk about that in a couple different ways today. But before we get started, I just want to mention, as always, that I just want to share my personal view with you guys of the way that I view my personal practice and how I practice in my spiritual journey. And these are just things that I've learned in my own experiences, and I don't want to try to change anybody's idea of spirituality or your beliefs or anything like that. I just want to share what I've found in my personal path with all of you to hopefully help you in your own personal path. So the term know thyself, as a simple shortened version of know thyself, know thy power, it doesn't really have any originating sources from what I've found. There isn't any one place that seems to originate from that people have been able to find. There is some talk that it could have originated from the Greek philosopher Plato. It's also said that the Socrates also invented that, but there's also documentation of it being within documentation from ancient China and ancient Egypt. So there's a lot of different philosophers and documentation from many different dates and times and ancient texts that have that similar saying of knowing yourself is the beginning of wisdom, or, knowing thyself is knowing thy power, and things along those lines. And essentially, it all boils down to knowing thyself, and know thy power is just boiled down to knowing your limits and knowing how to motivate yourself and knowing what you're capable of. And so that is something that when I was rebranding and kind of reviving my business, I really wanted to center around that, because I want to encourage others to be able to understand themselves on a deeper level, the way that I have learned to understand myself on a deeper level, which has then in turn really helped me within my life in so many different ways, within my personal life and also within my spiritual practice. The more I understand myself through experiences that I have, through difficulty that I experience, through therapy, through friendships, through relationships, through deaths, through rebirths, those are all things and situations that have helped me to understand myself as a person and understand what it is that I'm capable of. And in turn helps me to feel more motivated to try to reach even higher levels of achievement for myself of, well, I was able to do this before, so let's see if we can go beyond that. Let's see if we can push that limit. Let's see if we can push that boundary or push down that wall. Let's see if we can get more vulnerable. Let's see if we can get more strength of discipline or things like that. And it really helps to approach life with a mindset of the more you know yourself, the more you know what you're capable of and what you feel like you're capable of, and therefore you can better assess where you can be improving. So let's talk about some steps that can be taken to start understanding yourself on a deeper level. How can you start knowing yourself if right now you don't feel like you do? And this can be on a personal level or on a spiritual level, because I do feel like they both go hand in hand. And I do think that it's not going to be effective to know yourself on a magical level if you don't allow yourself to start knowing yourself on a personal level, and vice versa. So if you start focusing on knowing yourself on a personal level and don't focus at all on the spiritual knowledge of yourself, I feel like they kind of just have to go hand in hand. And I think even if you start focusing on one, you're going to inevitably end up also focusing on the other, even if you don't intend to. I think they just go hand in hand enough to where if you're going to do one, you're also going to do the other. I have currently been reading through an audiobook that is called When You're Ready, This Is How You Heal by Brianna Wiest. And I haven't gotten through the whole book, but the book has been so helpful so far and so insightful and so beautifully written, but also very straight to the point and has a lot of thought-provoking insights in it. And I highly recommend you read it if you are looking for a book that is helping you with journal prompts and helping you to just have things to think about, to understand yourself on a deeper level. Brianna Wiest is also an author that has another book called The Mountain Is You, and it's co-written with Stacy Glembowski, and it's a really beautiful book. I've heard, I haven't read it myself, but I do plan on reading it after I've finished the current book by Brianna. But the book, The Mountain Is You, is one that a lot of people around me, as well as my therapist, has recommended and said is a really good one. But I just happened to start with the other one. And When You're Ready, This Is How You Heal has been a really beautiful book to help me to understand certain behaviors and certain viewpoints that I have about myself and of the world and how I navigate situations, that has helped me to realize where I'm showing up for myself in a beneficial way and where I am kind of letting myself down. And I think that's really important. Now, obviously, therapy is a great option for most people. I'm not going to say that it's going to be a good option for everyone, because therapy, talk therapy in particular, isn't going to be a good fit for everyone. There are going to be people who just don't benefit from that, and that is absolutely okay. So I want to state here, if for whatever reason my opinion on that is something that matters to you, if that is not something that helps you to understand yourself better or heal or find progress in your life right now or in the future or has in the past, then that's okay. And there are other ways to get to know yourself outside of talk therapy. But I do encourage you to try it at least once in your life if you've never tried it. And of course, if you have the option and the resources to try it, I do encourage you to do so. But if you don't have options with therapy and getting to know yourself that way, journaling has been a really helpful option for a lot of people. I know for myself, I love the idea of journaling, but I'm just not much of a journaler. I really am not. I was never really great at keeping up with a diary growing up, and I have found that my way of documenting my life has been more so through the experiences that I've had and creating things. So writing poetry, writing music, taking photography, things like that, where I'm able to document things in a visual or auditory way that helps me to process experiences or process the art and the growth of knowing myself on a deeper level throughout my life. And for some people, it is going to be journaling that's going to be a really good fit, but it's just not going to work for everybody, and that's okay. There are a lot of options, such as like apps and things like that, that have a lot of different ways that you can start monitoring your life and monitoring your moods and things like that, that can be helpful. But that alone isn't necessarily going to help you understand yourself on a personal level. It's going to help you to understand the contributing factors to what causes you to experience things in a certain way or navigate things in a certain way, which I do think is an important part of knowing yourself. One of the apps that I've really liked personally in helping me to navigate my different moods and how I'm feeling and to better understand my emotional space is an app called How We Feel. And it's on iOS. I think it may be on Android as well. But it's an app where it gives you a bunch of different options of word prompts of how you're feeling, so that if you're not quite sure of how you're feeling, you can kind of move around the bubbles until you find one that fits closest to what you're feeling emotionally. And then you can go from there of, do you feel like this is related to your partner? Do you feel like this is related to your friendships? Do you feel like this is caused by work? Things like that. And it does give you an option to document it on a deeper level through text or through a voice memo or something like that, which I think is really cool. And I'm not sponsored by Brianna Weist or the app at all, but these are just things that I've found recently that have really helped me in navigating to know myself on a deeper level. So I wanted to share them with you all. But that app has been really helpful to kind of see, and you can look over the terms of like a month or so to see the common spaces that you are in emotionally and things like that can be really helpful. But a couple different things that I wanted to also talk about in knowing yourself is also knowing your limits and what's changing for you. So a couple different things that I wanted to mention in this episode is some beliefs that I've had from even the beginning of when I started this podcast that have changed up until this point. And you're welcome to use any of these as journaling prompts if that's helpful for you, or things to just spark conversation with yourself or with other people, or to help you to have thought prompts of things that you can think on and consider within your own beliefs in your own life. One of the beliefs that I had back when I started this podcast, and even when I started posting on TikTok a lot, and when I started my YouTube channel and things like that, and started my spiritual practice, was that the earth or the world is a place to learn lessons. And before people are like, wait, you don't believe that? It's not, it is, and not quite the same. In the beginning, back when I first really believed that that was the case, it was something where I think I just needed a reason to be here and a reason to continue my life. When you just don't feel like moving forward, when you feel like you're just at the end of the rope, you're like, this is enough for me. This is what I can handle. I don't want to be here anymore. I think that we just need something that gives us a reason for sticking around, whether that is a person or a situation or a random hobby or a random, what they call glimmers in our lives of things that bring us joy, moments that bring us joy. And when I started this podcast, and honestly, before I started it, I had gone through a lot of experiences in my life that made me feel like I was constantly just going to be in a space where I had to either be surviving or healing from something terribly traumatic. And it just made me feel like, what's the point? If I'm just going to be here to suffer, what is the actual point? Dealing with trauma, dealing with homelessness, things like that can be really heavy, and it can be things that make you feel like you need to have a reason of why that happened. And when we don't know how to forgive ourselves and find a sense of closure with experiences that we've had, I think we look for ways to find closure in the sense of there had to be a reason for it, right? There had to be some sort of reason. And I think that happens too when there's some sort of injustice or a feeling of injustice that happens, like someone who is young and, has vitality and seems healthy suddenly passes unexpectedly. Those are situations where it leaves us with the question of why. And in order for our brains to process that, oftentimes we need there to be some sort of cosmic reasoning, some sort of bigger reason beyond maybe even our understanding or our grasp that gives us some vague sense of why that happened, why that would take place. So in order to process the things that had happened in my life, I really held on to that new age belief of that the earth and our world, the way that it is a place to learn lessons. And this is where your soul comes to learn things that you can't learn on other planets or in other experiences that you might have as a soul or an incarnated spirit somewhere. And while I do hold that belief to some degree, I do think that it kind of creates this weird sense that Earth is like superior in some way. And that part of it just doesn't quite sit right with me. There is some sort of elitist mindset or belief that I feel like is undertoned there that just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And so although I do feel like in a lot of ways Earth is a place where our souls come to learn lessons, I don't think that that's not something that we can learn or experience in other spaces, right? That our souls can only experience here. I think that is kind of a limiting viewpoint to have, in the sense of kind of narrowing it down and saying Earth is a prized commodity and the only place we can understand these things. And I do believe that there are going to be situations where a soul comes here and maybe it's not a place for them to learn lessons. Maybe it's a place where they have come to help other people learn lessons, right? We don't know. I mean, there's so many things that with spirit, like I can talk about what the spirits tell me and what the conversations are that I have with deities and spirits and guides and things like that and higher selves. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to we genuinely just don't quite know. Like there's always that air of and that element of the unknown to it, because who knows? We could all be making all of this up. But the thing that keeps me from really truly holding on to that as the absolute truth is that so many people who have never talked to each other, who, you know, have all these similar experiences and all these similar ideas or these similar philosophies, who maybe have never talked to each other and never had similar experiences or exposure to the things that would cause them to believe that thing. It just makes me think that there's something bigger there that we're not seeing that could be causing us to have those conclusions. Another belief that I held for a very long time is that trauma creates us into stronger people. And while I do believe that we can become stronger through the experiences that we have as people, I also don't believe that we need to experience trauma in order to become stronger. And I think there's a way of viewing that that can be shifted there. So rather than looking at it of, I need to go through difficulty in order to be stronger, or I need to go through trauma in order to be stronger, or I needed to experience that trauma in order to be stronger. I think my belief now is that the trauma that we experience is things that do shape us, but I don't necessarily believe that it's always something that we need to go through in order to become strong people or to become who we are today. I do think that the experiences that we have, whether good or bad, are the things that truly shape us as people. I feel like it's the things that I have gone through that have created me to have the beliefs that I do, the viewpoints that I do, and to become the person that I am today. But there also is this element of the saying of trauma creates us into stronger people that I think creates this sense of invalidness with people's suffering or struggle of processing trauma, because it makes them feel as though if they're struggling to process the trauma or the experiences that they've had that have been difficult, that they aren't strong, that they're not strong enough to go through that, right? So I think although that mindset can be helpful in some regards, it also can be detrimental in the sense that it can create this idea that in order to be strong people, we have to go through difficulty, or in order to be knowledgeable about ourselves or knowledgeable about the world, or to have beliefs that, you know, are constructive or helpful, that we need to go through something difficult. And I just think that that's not a super helpful way of approaching things. So that idea around trauma creating us into stronger people, for me at least, has changed. This one is one that hurt my soul a little bit when I came to the realization that my beliefs around it had changed. Because, listen, I love living in delusion just as much as anybody else, but the idea that the universe will bring us everything that we want if we want it bad enough is just not the case. At least I don't believe that to be the case. And the reason why is, one, because I've had so many situations in my life where I truly believed that if I wanted something bad enough, I could achieve it. I could get it. Whether it was a job or a certain outcome or winning the lottery or being with a certain person forever. And I believed that if I wanted it bad enough, the universe would move, mountains for me to have that thing. Now, there's a couple different things that makes this a problem. One, it's a very, very self-centered viewpoint of, I am the sun in this universe, and the universe is going to move around me in order to accommodate what it is that I want. It just is kind of this egocentric idea that we are the focus of the universe. And even though we are the center of our own world, right? You, as yourself, you are the focus in your reality, because you kind of need to be in order to survive. Like, if you weren't the focus of your life, you probably wouldn't care about feeding yourself and making sure you get enough sleep. Like, there has to be some level of ego in order to maintain your everyday life, right? And stay healthy and stay alive. But in the sense of saying, like, I want this to happen, so the entire universe and spirit is going to make it happen for me no matter what, regardless of what's happening or what kind of action I'm taking, I think is just something that can be detrimental, because it can create this idea that there isn't really anything that we have to do outside of just believing that we want it, or wanting or desiring that thing enough. It kind of creates this obsessive mindset of, if I just obsess over this person, the universe will bring them into my life. Or if I obsess over this person, the universe will cause them to fall in love with me and become my partner. It is kind of on the line between obsessive and unhealthy, because it's creating this idea that we can just focus solely on something enough that it will become ours. And that can be really dangerous. But it also comes with this idea that we don't really have to do anything outside of just having a belief or having an obsession to make something happen. And it does create a kind of lack of motivation, in a sense of, yeah, you can really want a business to happen, or you can really want to be with someone, but if you're not putting yourself out there of, taking the steps to create that business, establish that business, start the business, market the business, right? Or talking to that person, creating a friendship with that person, or creating a connection with that person, creating a repertoire with that person, asking that person if they're interested in going on a date with you, things like that. The actions that we would need to take in order for the universe or spirit to even orchestrate that to happen, it just implies that we wouldn't need to do anything along those lines in order to make that happen, or in order to facilitate that. So I think there is an importance in understanding that, yes, having a desire for something to come into our lives, having a desire for causing something to take place in our lives, or having a desire that drives us forward, is a beautiful thing and is an important part of taking action that needs to be taken in order for something to happen. But it also is something where we need to also understand that there is action that needs to be taken on our part in order for those things to sometimes take place at all, or even be a possibility of happening. Another thing that my beliefs have changed around is one that I kind of feel a little bit silly talking about, because it sounds very naive. And I will be the first to admit that I tend to kind of approach life with a sense of naivety. And it's not even really necessarily because I want to. Sometimes it's just because I want to believe that people have the best intentions and that there aren't any people who have bad intentions. Because sometimes if I focus on the fact that there are people with bad intentions, it's hard for me to trust anybody. So I kind of go into the world just thinking everybody has good intentions, and that can also be a bad thing, just the way that thinking everybody has bad intentions can also be a bad thing. And that is the belief that if people have similar beliefs to you, that they are safe people. And I feel like there are a lot of you that are just sitting there and you're like, oh, no, 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 no. Because yeah, no, that is not the case. People can have similar beliefs to you. Like, I will use the example of Norse paganism because I am a practicing Norse pagan, and going into carrying that belief and starting that practice and taking that on into my spirituality meant that I had to come to the realization that I was putting myself under an umbrella, a shared umbrella, through the identification of being a Norse pagan to white supremacists. And I hated that. I hated that because it's very similar to the whole, like, well, those people consider themselves Christians, but they're not really Christians because they're not the same kind of Christian that I am. No, they share the same beliefs as you. They also identify as Christians. So having similar beliefs to someone, someone can believe in the Norse gods, someone can practice with the Norse gods, someone can worship the Norse gods, someone might be even working with the Norse gods and hold beliefs that do not make them safe for other people. And that is a very hard pill to swallow. It's really uncomfortable because we want to be able to believe that if someone shares a similar belief to us, that they are just automatically safe. And maybe that's a naive approach to things or a naive belief to have, but that is something that I wish could be true. I wish that if someone considered themselves spiritual, that it just meant that they were a safe person. I wish that if someone said that they liked flowers, that it meant that they were a safe person, but it's just not the case. And even though, like I said, it could make me sound very naive, it was something that I believed for a long time. And I think it just came from, I don't really know exactly where it came from. Maybe it came from my Christian upbringing of, thinking that if a person was Christian, they automatically were safe. And that belief was very much dashed in my experience with Christianity. But I also isolated it for some reason within the Christian beliefs of being like, oh, well, now that I've had a bad experience with Christian people, then that means all Christian people aren't safe, right? My brain, instead of saying some Christians aren't safe, just lumped all of them in together, which isn't also a helpful thing. But getting into spirituality, started thinking, okay, if people say like, oh, I'm spiritual, or I have a spiritual practice, or I'm a witch, or, things like that, and they shared beliefs that I had, oh, well, I believe in channeling too, or I believe in mediumship too, or I'm a paranormal investigator too, that it automatically made them a safe person for me to share with and be vulnerable with and open up to. And it just isn't the case. And it's a very sad realization, but it is a belief that has changed for me. Another thing that I have learned and that my beliefs have changed around over the years that also might feel and seem naive, because it honestly kind of is that being kind to everyone means that you will be liked by everyone, and that no one will misinterpret your actions and intentions. And ladies and gentlemen and others, this is very much not the case. You can be kind to everybody. You can have the best of intentions. You can go into situations saying, I have good intentions. I am not going in to hurt anybody, and still end up hurting people and or having people misinterpret your actions as something that is maliciously intended, whether that is based on the way that you approach it, the kind of approach you take, the person that you are, or past experiences that they've had with other people who don't even have anything to do with you that they are projecting onto the situation. So there's so many different reasons of why what you can be doing from a good intentioned place can be taken as not that. And sometimes it has nothing to do with you. And sometimes it does. Sometimes it means that you are going into it with the idea that you are doing something helpful when in reality it's not helpful. Or you can have the idea that you're going into something being supportive and you're not being supportive. And sometimes we just don't realize that until we end up hurting people, or we end up in a situation where we lose something. And then we're like, wow, okay, I totally thought I was approaching that in a different way, and that was not helpful. It's like putting water on a grease fire, you know? You can have the best of intentions by putting water on that grease fire to put it out, but that water also can spread the grease fire and make it bigger. So it's the best of intentions, and going into life with the best of intentions doesn't mean you aren't going to make things worse and or have your actions interpreted by people around you or in the situations that you're in as terrible and malicious. And along those same lines of another belief that I had for a long time that I knew wasn't the case, but in the back of my mind, I still felt like I had some control over it. And I think it was just this idea that if I believed it hard enough, that I had some sort of control over it, that I could eventually actually have that control. And that is that you can always be in charge of the narratives that other people have of you. Like, you can always change the way that other people see you. And sometimes that can be the case. Sometimes you meet people and they have a terrible viewpoint of you, and you are able to change the way that they see you because of how you approach them, or the interactions that you have with them, or the actions that you take, right? But that's not always the case. And just like what I said before with the previous belief that changed, you can have the best of intentions and have someone still interpret it as terrible or have it hurt someone, right? So you can't cause someone to trust you. You can't cause someone to feel good about you. You can't cause someone to change their belief of you, because that is not something you're in charge of. You are not in charge of how other people see you. You're not in charge of what other people believe of you. And as much as I wish that we could be, we can't. You can't change it. It's something that is just going to happen. And the realization of that is so frustrating, because it's this, it kind of goes back to another one of like that strong desire. If we want it bad enough, we can make it happen, right? You can want someone to like you so much as a person. You can want to have someone view you as a safe person so much, but maybe the trauma that they've experienced in their life doesn't allow them to do that yet, or at all. Or maybe the way that you are or the mannerisms that you have makes it to where that person just never quite feels safe with you for some reason, even if you are a safe person. And so even if you approach life and other people and the interactions that you have with society around you with good intentions and with kindness and love, it can still be interpreted through the lens of people who have experienced other things that cause them to see you in a different light. And it's like trying to change the eyeballs of someone around you to be able to see different colors. Like, there are going to be people who will just have beliefs that cause them to never see you in a certain way, because we aren't for everybody. I am not for everybody. You are not for everybody. There are always going to be people in the world who either hate us, don't like us, don't approve of us, love us, adore us, support us, and also want to tear us down and have us not exist, right? There are always going to be people out there like that. And that is equally a terrifying idea and also kind of a relief that I have no control over it. I genuinely don't have any control over that. That is not a wheel that I have to try to gain control of, because it's always going to be something that I just can't. So Jesus, take the wheel. Spirit, take the wheel. Like, that is a car that I am always going to be a passenger in, and I will never be able to be a driver, and that's okay. But for a long time, I believed if I just wanted it bad enough, I could definitely be the driver of that car. And now I'm just happy being a passenger on the bus. But with all of that said, I am curious to know what beliefs, if you feel comfortable sharing in the comments, have changed for you. What is something that maybe you believed prior that you really believed for a long time, or structured you as a person, that maybe changed over time? And I also want to mention that beliefs over time can change, and that is okay. I think it's important to remember that people change, people grow, people adapt, and people evolve. And evolution happens through growth, and growth happens through change, and change happens when our beliefs change, whether about ourselves or the world around us. So if right now you are not happy with who you are as a person, or you're not happy with your spiritual practice, or you're not happy with your beliefs, or you feel like things will never get better, just know that in a lot of situations, they can improve, they can get better, and you can become a different person than you are today, whether for good or bad. And you have a choice of what that is. All it takes is one step at a time every day towards bettering yourself and changing the way that you approach life and others and yourself. You, just as much as me, just as much as anybody else, deserves to live a life that you are proud of, and that you feel settled with, and that you feel satisfied with, and that you can live with honor and feel as though you are approaching life in the best way that you know how. And even if 5 years down the road you wish you had approached things differently, all you can do is try to improve what you're doing right now every day the best way you know how to in this moment. And that is okay. I love you all. I hope you all are doing amazing. And I just want to say thank you so much for your support with the podcast and listening and being here. And I hope this episode was helpful and gave you some prompts or things to think about. And I look forward to looking at your responses in the comments and seeing how we've grown. I will talk to you all again in June, and I look forward to it. All right. Love you so much, ghosties. Have a good one.